bubble buddy. All right, so d4, we're gonna play d5 to start. Bishop f4. Let's go e6. And we'll go f5. So this is a great, I'm not saying it's great like it's so strong we're gonna win 100%, but it's a great Stonewall because it's exactly how it's supposed to look. Perfect. Let's castle. I feel obliged to mention this, so I absolutely will on the next turn. You know, a really natural move after castling, or just in general, is you have your pieces like this, and a lot of people play knight b to d7, thinking, okay, if the knight captures, then I take back with my queen, and my queen guards my bishop. But this move, sometimes there's a pawn on f7, will blunder knight takes f7, and it also blunders knight takes c6. The point is, white can move the knight to some random square to attack your queen. You have to react to it, and then your bishop will be hanging on d6 because your knight's in the way. So I see so many people play knight d7 and just walk into some sort of tactic. Even at higher and higher levels, I'm not sure, it's just feels like a blind spot almost. So I'm gonna start like this, defending my bishop. Then we'll bring the knight. And remember, we're not planning to take and allow the pawn to take back and hit our pieces like that. I see g4. I could get involved in, capturing it, but I'm just gonna stick to our plan of knight in. In general, I don't want to get distracted and move my pawn away from the center. I want my pawn guarding the e4 square, which is where my knight's gonna end up. Takes. Let's of course take this way. This is exactly why we didn't want to take on g4. Now this pawn is ready to take on e4, of course, and this knight is under attack at the moment. Okay, so he goes rook e1, but I just don't think he was paying attention to the fact that all my pieces are now hitting e5. So nice and simple. We can just take this. Right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Why not take with the rook? It's just the opening. The Stonewall is all about anchoring a knight in on e4. Rook takes does not anchor my knight. All of a sudden I would lose a pawn on e4. Do you imagine my rook here instead? Doesn't work out. Take the bishop, and after pawn takes, we have a nice tactic here to win the game. Knight c3, which is a check. I like this game. It was exactly what you'd want a Stonewall to look like. What if they take my knight? Then they would lose their king. Unfortunately, not an option. I move the knight away, uncovering a check from my queen while hitting my opponent's queen simultaneously. So now at this point, it's more or less just matter of technique. We do have a queen for a knight and a pawn, actually queen and a pawn for a knight, so it's very winning at this point. What if they take my knight on e4? Well, if they ever capture on e4, in the Stonewall especially, we always want to take back with the f pawn this way. It opens up our rook and just gets our pieces set perfectly. So always f takes your knight back in the center. Now, after recovering a knight, it is hopefully just going to be a trade fest on the e-file. That would make things easier for me. Rook e8 and just trades. I think people are generally very tempted by this. It looks like you're getting the queen and, you know, big deal, but it is a pretty even trade, let's say. But obviously when you don't have any other pieces, it's a very bad trade for white. And we should have had an escape square made here. We got him back ranked. GG. But I was talking about this Stonewall. First of all, this is like the starting position. You don't want to go here and fall into some queen h5 stuff. So I absolutely brought my knight out next to stop that. And then we need to get castled. That's a priority. And then I mentioned a pitfall that a lot of people fall into is knight d7. We don't want to fall into that. So I'm just playing queen here to defend my bishop and then bring my knight out. Meanwhile, this knight is ready to jump into e4, and we remember this bishop maneuver of getting that bishop to h5, which is quite strong. I'm not going to fall into the Stonewall trap that I set myself, which is, hey, go here, take me. You know, something's going to take back and attack all your pieces. If I take here, I'm going to lose a piece by white taking back. Game over. So instead, it's now time to jump in. If our pawns ever get captured, we always take with our e-pawn. It improves our bishop and it opens the e-file. And then if our knight ever gets taken, we always take with the f-pawn. That's pretty much it. So here I would never consider rook takes. My knight's not protected anymore, so white can just do something like this. But also, this move just threatens the knight, continues to guard my knight in the center. Only good things here. If the opponent goes f3, well, we'll probably need to cross all these bridges when we get to a specific position, but for the most part, f3 at the moment is getting killed by queen h4. And there's even times in the Stonewall where you can leave your knight there and take back, and it's a fun sacrifice to do. But obviously f3 is a great move to play in general against the Stonewall because you know that your opponent is kind of threatening knight e4. So absolutely they could play f3 to stop that. You know, if they did it like right away, that would also be a mistake. Now their bishop would probably be lost and bishop g3 isn't available. So they blocked the communication from the queen on d1 to the h5 square. So yeah, f3 is kind of a strong move because it takes this square, but I'm just saying there's a time and a place, and black still has a lot of resources. It's not like you play f3 and the Stonewall is just game over. And that's not the case. Okay, d5. I'm going to start with e3. I see my opponent threatening e5, so I am going to play f4 straight away. We'll continue with bishop d3, c3. Okay, this move doesn't really bother me too much. Let's just move the queen away. We're just focusing on castling, maybe getting our setup with c3. Remember this bishop maneuver, and then of course, the fan favorite, knight e5. He's really testing me here. It's looks quite good to take that, but I'm going to stay resolute and focused on the goal and castle this way. But I'm really being tempted on this side of the board, but no. We're going to castle, get that knight in. Can I put the coordinates on the board? The answer is a resounding no. All right, he is just begging me to take this. We're gonna say no once again. I stand firm in my beliefs in the Stonewall. We don't need that knight. I'm gonna have to look at the knight e5 moves. There we go. Let's continue with this. Sometimes it's nice to do this first because you can imagine if you play knight d2 here, where does this knight go after that, right? There's no immediate square. Knight b3 is not great. So it's nice to kind of do this bishop move first, and then everybody gets to go where they want to go. All right, let's play knight e5. All right, and we finally see f6. And I played knight e5 really to encourage that, so that we might get some answers to our question, what do we do with f6? So, a few things I mentioned. If the king is still in the middle, I'm immediately looking at queen h5. If the king's not in the middle, I don't have queen h5. f6 threatens to take the knight. First thing I would always consider is, hey, is there a way for me to leave my knight there and actually just sacrifice? At the moment, takes, the bishop moves. I don't really see anything past that, to be honest. So, no. And then the final thing that we have to do is move the knight. Plain and simple. So, we're going to move the knight. Sometimes it happens that you don't have access to this great Stonewall square. He goes knight here. I am probably going to save the bishop. Knight d2 coming next. The one thing that f6 does, though, and it will always do this no matter what, is it weakens e6. And because it weakens e6, I'm definitely tempted into like moves like e4. Anything that targets that. But for now, I think I'll stick to our script here. All right, he's played e5. First of all, there's no question I'm taking it this way. No question. F takes is just a general rule. If it's just something to do with the F pawn, because it opens up your pieces, it's always worth it to do. Now, in this position, it's actually pinned to the bishop on d6. So there's not much black can do without losing the bishop. I'm actually very okay with it. I'm looking at the move e4 to further open up the position and not seeing anything wrong with it. So I'm going to go e4 myself. Rook to e1. Because when I see people play f6 against the Stonewall, my reaction is to try to get e4 in. So in this case, I was able to do so pretty nicely. Okay, well, this move won't surprise us. Taking the bishop, hitting the queen, and there should be a juicy pawn waiting for me on the next turn. Okay. Takes. And miraculously, this bishop, which started off as the worst piece, is now the best. Bishop on e5 dominates. Rook h6, not going to be making any significant threats. Rook to h6, and I think we can actually, it looks like I'm being unnecessarily fancy here, but I think bishop d6 is actually just the best move. Looks like I'm trying to dunk on a 652, hoping he's making a mistake, but this is actually just the best move. If rook e6, queen takes e6, and mate all the same. So bishop d6 is just, I think it's just a winning move. Very nice. That's a nice little motif there. And I should correct myself. I said the goal is not to dunk on a 600 like this. It's not like I'm doing this, just to do that. And I emphasize just to do that. I am playing bishop d6 to dunk on his motherfucking head. But that's not the only reason we did that. It is also the best move in the position. Absolutely. But I'm glad we got to see someone play f6. Even though my opponent did not play that well in the opening, obviously I could have taken his piece multiple times. I felt it was a little more instructive to let the game keep going, and see how he handles it. But pawn on f6, you see how annoying that is. You know, in hindsight, jumping into e5 might not be the best move, and maybe make more sense to just continue with knight d2, right? If knight e5 has such an easy reaction. Whereas if our opponent has a knight on f6, jumping into e5 is always good. So something to keep in mind for these next games. Okay, well, the Norwegians are really out in full force today. e4. Generally continuing with e3. Something like this. Okay, e3. Bishop d3. Just to take that square. I don't see any threat of e5, so I'm not in a particular rush. Now I'm in a particular rush. We're gonna play f4. All right, let's complete our setup. And I mentioned this before. I like an early knight d2 to stop black from playing knight e4. I think this is important. Knight f3. Now that this move is not an option, it just means that when I do this to him, he can't just respond by doing the same thing. Sometimes he might not even see knight e4, but when I do this, he's like, oh, wait a minute, I'll do that too. So I like to be ahead of the curve here. Knight e4 is not possible. That bishop is doing nothing. Castle, and knight e5 is incoming. And if you flip the board just for a sec, like, appreciate black's position for a sec. There's no break here. There's no break here. This bishop doesn't seem to be doing anything. This bishop is stuck, but you can't move the pawn. Knight e4 becomes a move almost out of necessity, out of desperation. So had I not played knight d2 and just played knight f3 and castle, black would play knight e4 and then maybe follow up with f5. And I think that's to be avoided at all costs. As you can see, it was entirely fruitful me playing my prophylactic knight b to d2 because I think my opponent felt a little helpless there against the Stonewall. Like, it's not a good feeling. Not a good feeling at all. Now, of course, in this position, we have to consider bishop h7. The nice thing about the Stonewall is it always gives you a little anchor on g5. So I'm looking at takes, knight here, king back, queen here. No way to stop this. So it has to be like, you know, rook e8, for example. Queen h7, king there, queen h8, king there. And you see how the attack kind of dies in that moment, right? There's not really anything else for me. I'm only attacking with a queen and a knight. It's not very good. So I'm actually going to castle. I don't think there's anything there. Maybe he might blunder into a mate there, but we have to keep things in perspective, play the good moves. Knight e5, let's stick to the Stonewall basics. And of course, we always want to take with the f pawn. Ooh, we took the wrong way as well. This rook is hanging, that bishop was hanging. That will probably be a KO. I think in this moment right here, queen h5, g6, queen h6. You know, black maybe moves the rook, plays bishop f8. I'm also pretty interested in rook f3. Rook f3, you know, let's say he moves his rook and saves it. The threat, something like check, rook h3, and queen h5. And it's important to remember that's not forced mate. Black just plays f5, and we're not exactly giving checkmate there. So in this case, I think taking the rook is, you know, above and beyond the best move. But in terms of attacking options, queen to either of those squares, rook to f3, I think we'd be very close to setting up something lethal. Is Stonewall versus Stonewall easier to play for white or black? I think that the answer to that question is black, just because you're reacting. As white, you have to kind of invent the ideas. But obviously, you'd rather be white with the extra move. It never feels good to play the Stonewall symmetrical. you feel like you just have no advantage as white. Now this is no good, so we absolutely want to save this bishop. I think we just bring it right back to e4. Ooh, okay. Anytime this happens, you know, we basically take on f6 no matter what. Our rook is being attacked, but not captured. I wish I could say that rook f3 was an intentional move, but it was actually just moving my mouse around the screen. Somehow this move made itself. Great. Oh, hello to Phil in the chat. Now, I've always wondered, is there like is there a way to like cage the Twitch staff? Like you can cage plebs, you can have sub only. Is there a way to just cage the staff? If not, Phil, I think that is I think that's a new feature you might consider. I can tell you a lot of streamers might be keen on it. It might be heavily utilized. Why didn't I save my rook? Well, if I saved my rook immediately with my bishop in the corner, I would have lost my bishop. I'd rather save 3 points than save 3 points, give up 5 and get 3 myself, rather than lose 3 for free. Mattis is funny. Maybe Phil is Tommy's caseworker. You know, like when you have like a caseworker when someone's rehabbing, just to make sure that they're doing okay. So I think he might be here just to supervise Tommy and just ensure that the re-entry process is going well. Hey, you guys know I'm interested in trades. I'm a trader by trade. That's right. Phil is actually baiting everyone in chat into a ban right now. Remember, gang, English only in chat. Phil is actually a plant just to see if you guys would break the rules. Well done, Phil. We've exposed the anarchists. Let's sort of set up the cage here. If we can't cage the plebs, at least I can cage Mozzie 7. Another great move from Mozzie. This move, I don't think my opponent's gonna get a move off in time, but it does threaten. Checkmate in 2. Good game to Mozzie. Although there were a lot of blunders from Black, they definitely kept the fight going the entire way. But this is important. Knight d2. Stop this ahead of time. Get ahead of it. That's probably the most important thing I can get you guys to remember from this game, is that if you did something like this, I promise you, you will not enjoy these positions as much. You'll go here, they'll go here, and you'll be like, okay, great. Your opening is so strong that if it gets played against you, it completely nullifies everything. And we got the white pieces again. Aha. So, against c5, you can imagine if you play d5, you're not really getting what you're looking for. Also, if you play c3, you may get sort of tricked into this. And technically speaking, you want to capture this way. So I think it's important to start with e3. With c3 and just solidify all that. f4 on the way. Especially now, because we don't want to let e5 happen. Knight there, bishop d3, knight f3 coming. Yep, if pawn takes here, even though I have two options, I will still take with the e-pawn. This is the move I've been intending since the start. It'll always be the move I want to do. That's the plan. All right. I see this. I know the bishop's not going to be coming out anytime soon. I'm a little bit interested in sinking this knight in on e5 ASAP. Let's do that. There's one thing about knight d2 that can be considered a little bit annoying, is that it doesn't defend f4, the bishop, anymore. So if black plays bishop here, and your knight's on d2 and they take, you can't really take that way, even though you want to. You really want to. Whenever c4 happens, we always go to c2. Don't be going to e2 if you have this square available, and you should. There's a pawn on c5. You should have played c3 by now. I'm going to make a very important move here. Knight d2. Now there's no worry of taking or any of that business, so let's cover the e4 square. Castle and knight e5. And we should be steamrolling the position now. Okay, well, knight e5. Let's see how he handles it, right? Just sticking that knight in there. Boy, is it tough to handle. You can see, for example, if he castles, we can immediately take this pawn on f7. So he's got some decisions to make. He takes. You know that we're a fan of f takes. It's never going to be d takes. So we take, and guess what? This knight doesn't have that square available to it. He might go there anyway, which would be a mistake, a big mistake. But if the knight doesn't go there, where is it going? Back to g8. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. So how do we want to continue? I am thinking about, well, all of these queen moves look tempting right now. Queen g4 to hit g7, you know, and then after g6 to go after this pawn. If I play queen f3 to hit this, maybe knight h6 can be played. So I definitely like the idea of starting with queen g4 to hit this pawn. We'll see how it gets reacted to, but if pawn there, I was considering queen f4. And remember, a great way to free our pieces down here is the move e4. For the moment, knight takes e5 is indeed possible, so I'm a little bit hesitant, but I like e4 a lot because we want to take, and it also gets our bishop out on this diagonal. So, continuing. Knight f3 to g5 looks good. e4 does look okay, and queen f4 in particular looks quite nice. I'm going to go with queen f4. I'm liking this. I'm liking this. He castles. I think it's a tremendous move, and I give him a lot of credit for playing it. Yes, I think this is a good move, but I also think that this pawn is not going anywhere. Like, I think I'll be able to take it in the future no matter what. So I'm personally not in a rush to take that. E4, I like now that this pawn is defended to get my pieces out. So I'm probably going to go E4. If he takes it, he's in a world of trouble. He's defended things. Another good move. I think he's really playing well. I'm going to continue developing here. This bishop, a little bit tied to this pawn, which is kind of making me consider a move like B3. B3 takes, and no matter what I take it with, my next move might be bishop A3. The move that 100% looks solid is knight F3, but I'm very tempted by B3 right now. Anytime your opponent plays a Stonewall and they don't have their dark square bishop, I think it's going to be kind of painful. Let's get that bishop out. Like, as soon as we start accessing some of these squares, I think our opponent will find it uncomfortable. Here, even just takes. And imagine that knight into D6. Meanwhile, we're still in a pin here. He's having a hard time getting developed, but I give him a lot of credit for how he's handled the position so far. I think he's really been fighting well. I'm going to take. And he decides to pull the trigger on this move, but with a hanging rook there, I fear he may get checkmated by a bishop soon. Knight e7. We'll be dropping a knight here. I like the way he's playing. He got the knight out maybe to cover his back rank. And although he lost a piece, I think he's playing in a fun way. I'm going to go c5 because I don't care for this diagonal at all. Queen b5. And we're going to take a risk here for all the good people of Twitch. We're going to play Queen f8. We're not going to pre-move it because that looks like we know what we're doing. We're going to take some time and then play this. Because then our opponent is going to be playing with confidence and they won't think we're up to something, and we'll be able to deliver this move for the fans. I said there was a possibility of that bishop mate on d6, and it manifested itself. Doesn't this just make everyone feel good? When you play f takes e5 in the Stonewall, or f takes e4, you open up that rook, and you just know there's going to be weaknesses here to target. This is just a phenomenal feeling. Now, if anyone's curious, the reason why we often get this great, like, you know, why would our opponent give away their dark square bishop? The reason why is because most of the time people develop their pieces like this. Makes sense, right? Most natural squares for every piece. And guess what? If you take with the knight, you're going to lose a piece. So people want to eliminate the knight, but they don't want to lose a piece, so they all end up making this decision. They give up the bishop. But then there's this like idea that if you just get your dark square bishop on these squares, or God forbid they castle, they're just walking into all the firepower. It's very tough to survive. The reason is they're 600s. I disagree. These pieces are often developed like this, even at higher levels, and it's just way too tempting to do this. The thing is, if you want to eliminate this knight, you either have to take with the bishop or you need to move your knight and play f6. And that's very difficult to arrange once your knight's already committed to f6. You guys should have an idea what's coming next. Knight f6. I'm glad we got a bit of a different opening here. Thanks, Ministry of Blunders, for the 5 months. Let's go. Let's go. I'm glad we got something else. All right. And thank you to a brand new sub from Phil. Big sub from Phil. The first time Phil has been subbed to the channel. Go, Phil. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's one of us. Phil is now a sub and can officially be banned. It's possible. So, the reason why I'm excited about this setup is because you might be thinking, what the hell do we do now? And that's a great question. And for that answer, I can refer you to our customer service representative, Phil. Take it away, Phil. Phil, you got this, right? Let him know. Oh, hang on a sec, guys. D5 has just been played. Hang on just a second. Wee wee wee. Get that knight into E5. Hold on a second. Phil, you were just about to explain that D5 would be forced by black and the knight would pop into E5 anyway. Makes sense, makes sense. We want to play bishop here, knight here, bishop here. Oh, doesn't that feel good? F takes E5. Oh, please, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have. Why, thank you. Knight H5. Well, plain and simple. Knight H5, knight on the rim. It's not good. And why is that? G4 traps the knight. Right? Had he brought the knight back. Oh, he's gone back to F6. Interesting from Wojtek. Wojtek. I believe now he's offering me the same choice I had here. With G4 played. Very interesting. All right, good stuff. Takes. And we want to get this bishop out. So let's go bishop to H6. The natural rook E8. Rook takes F6. And hopefully that'll be enough to satisfy the appetite of the crowd. The appetite of the crowd. Seems to be illegal. I tried to do it. For some reason it's not working. So I'll play a different move instead. That's really weird. Oh well. It's not working. Oh, we'll come back to that. Come back to that. Seems to be unplayable. So let's try it now. Oh, that's weird. It does work. I can't explain that. I don't know why it wasn't working. It must have been a bug or something, but it does work now. So I'll play it now. I'll play it now. That worked out. I'm gonna have to get in contact with chess.com about that one. That was annoying. I was trying to play it last turn, but it just wasn't clicking in for me. I couldn't for the life of me tell you why. Let's continue to force our way up the board. We'll bring in more artillery into the attack. Oh, he's coming with the pre-moves. But I don't think the pre-moves are going to save my friend Wojtek here. Bishop g4 and the resignation. I think he saw the forced mate here. Rook f8 and queen g7. That's right. Now, d6. I think you guys can all see that this is a clear issue for knight e5. Now, when he played d5 here, this was the worst move he could have done. Seriously. Like, he just allowed knight e5. Plain and simple. But if he didn't, and let's say he didn't, did some kind of knight c6 or something, you know, we would probably continue queen e2, bishop e1, knight d2, bishop h4, rook e1, all the same moves. Yes, we can't play knight e5, but you'll notice your opponent also can't play knight e4 or anything like that. It's tough for them to generate stuff to do. We're trying to restrict the move e5. We're doing a pretty good job. So if they can't play e5, they're tempted into moves like d5, and then we would just jump in immediately. So while we can't get our knight in there, it's also not clear what our opponent's up to. And at least you should have like 5 to 10 candidate moves ready to play. d4. Start with d5. e6 I like as the next move. f5 is the intention. Yeah, f5, knight f6. So we've actually played this exact thing before. If you guys remember, I think knight e5 was what our opponent played. We want to play knight here, bishop here, castle. Can I play the Stonewall without a d4 start? Depends on their next couple moves. The short answer is no, but I've been playing e6, d5. A lot of people take, and we play f5 all the same, and it kind of transposes. Okay, so we've seen this before, right? We're gonna castle, and remember, don't play knight d7. We're gonna fall for a trap there. What happens if white starts with e4? You gotta stay tuned to the show and find out. It's happened a lot. Meanwhile, we have a side quest of a pawn checkmate for 50 subs. Issued by Asurian180. A side quest. Can we achieve the desired result? A pawn checkmate. We've had some bishop mates, some fun ones, but we haven't quite got that pawn checkmate. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. Let's go queen e7 so we can bring the knight out. And remember, we have this knight into e4 move coming up. Okay, bishop g5 for the moment. I think we'll just stick with this. Remember, h6 would blunder knight g6. A move that I'm thinking about next, and you guys might like, is queen e8. The reason I like this is it gets out of the pin. And I'm hoping that he takes this. Now, if he doesn't take it, that knight might jump in e4. And this is a very important moment. In my opinion, if I take with the knight, this is just, I mean, what's going on, right? Pawn takes. All of a sudden, this knight has to leave. So he's got this, like, all set up to control e5, but all of a sudden, he just doesn't control it. And the g file will start to be really nice for me to use next. So pawn takes f6. Now, I control this square, but he doesn't control that square. First things first, let's get the king off the open file and the rook onto the open file. That's most important. Here and maybe h6, I'm not going to read too much into. I don't think there's any danger there, so I'm going to continue. Bringing the rook. Now we have to get our pieces out. We can't slack there. So how are we going to do it? This bishop, probably, you know, it doesn't really have the brightest future, but we don't really need to do much with this bishop. I'm thinking about getting my knight to that square, and it's definitely going to be a long process. But for the moment, I think I'm okay to even just gain a little bit of space over here. Maybe bring this knight to c4. All right. Because this is just so solid for me. a5. There I go. Usually when you have this structure, although you can play e5, I think for the most part you kind of want to avoid it. Like e5 just makes this pawn weaker and doesn't accomplish a ton. So I'm not going to be so interested in playing pawn to e5. Instead, I'm interested in pushing pawns over here. Knight to c4. And again, if he prevents that with b3, I've got a4. I see rook there. I see this move coming. I'm very interested in a move like this. Just kind of stopping it. Even after he plays bishop there, I could continue with rook g3. So I feel like I'm stopping pawn to g4 in almost every respect, which is nice. Rook a7 to g7 is a very funny way to double the rooks, but I could consider that. And finally, knight c4 is on my mind. So I feel like I have a lot of really good options here. Which one do we like? Knight c4 looks like a pretty tempting first one. I do like knight c4, and I'll tell you what else I'm thinking. I'm thinking about rook here, and then rook here, and sacking that just to keep things close. But I'm convinced the knight c4 is the right vibe. We want to stay attacking on this side of the board. Rook's hit. I think we know what move we were planning, which is rook g3 to keep things guarded. Not guarded, but prevented. Pawn g4 activates pretty much every piece he has. So I'm like clinging on to preventing it, like clinging on for dear life here. Okay, rook b8, bishop b4. These sort of moves come to mind. After queen d2, I don't actually see his next threat. So, yeah, it might be time for like sort of an a4. c5 also looks good. If we're really being fancy, I think pawn here, queen takes and bishop f4 gets the job done, but let's kind of just push for now. Ooh, a3. I have to say, now I'm getting tempted, right? For h3, he's crashing through. I'm finally gonna get g4, but we've done a pretty good job, right? We've kind of prevented things as long as we can. Takes. I'm looking at queen here. sort of eyeballing this side of the board, while also keeping an eye on this side. Knight g6 for the moment. I think we can take pretty comfortably. Takes here looks pretty damn good. We're gonna take. Queen takes. I'm trying to see how we get it to work. Check. 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 Didn't have enough time to try to get a pawn mate, unfortunately. And I really thought that I was gonna get it. The problem is, although I have checkmate in 2 here, it wouldn't have been with a pawn. That's my issue. So what I was hoping he was gonna do, was I was hoping he was gonna go here. So at least I could dream of this. Because then I figured, okay, he might go here, right? For checkmate. We would give check, and then mate with the pawn. That's what I was going for. But a little bit unlucky, he played king here. Now I didn't know what to do because I'm not able to deliver this with a mate. Even if I go here and need that extra check, because now if he goes here, well, first of all, maybe not even mating him. Okay, this was our Stonewall. Queen e7 to play knight d7. And then we actually did see for the first time someone essentially copy the Stonewall. Whenever I'm pinned like this, I always like to drop the queen back, whether it's from d8 or e7. I know it's moving the queen again, but just being out of that pin allows my knight to go to e4. And it allows me to play h6, because with the queen here, h6 would kind of drop some material. So queen e8 covers that square, allows h6, knight e4, all sorts of good moves. So big fan of queen e8, and then here, pawn takes on f6 is just an important move to keep in mind. Okay, d4, e3. E3 is the least expected, you know? No one expects this. f4. c3, castle. Now remember, they can still play d5 here. Absolutely. Let's go get this position. And just to be safe here, yeah, I'm just gonna take control of that square. And wow, he took that straight away. I'm gonna take back with the knight. The square is covered for the moment. And, you know, I've still got my knight e5 dreams. And guess what? This bishop is going to reroute like that. So let's do that. Got a knight e5 idea. Gonna reroute this bishop. I know it looks like a bad piece, but it's got one square where I think it's okay. You know, it's playable. And that's h4. When I see this move, don't you know I'm tempted by this? Why? Because everyone's tempted by a trade. And it just works so well. So we're definitely going to slot the knight into e5. Just give him a chance to make a mistake. And of course, always f takes e5. All right, rook e8. I think in this position, although there are many good moves, you know, bishop here, for example, looks like a tremendous move. Though there are many good moves, the important thing is to think, okay, I want him to take me. In this position, just because there's a pawn on b6, I think queen here and bishop here are just winning on the spot. Like, so strong. But if that pawn was on b7, those moves might not just be immediately winning. And what move would I do here? Probably queen f3. Just to stop knight e4 once again. That same idea of stopping knight e4. So that when I play bishop h4, he's not tempted to do this. And then play f5. I don't like that. Here, though, unfortunately for him, bishop here is just so strong. Attacking the knight, which can't be defended, pinning it to a rook, and encouraging knight takes where I'm ready to take back and win more material. So bishop c6 is just crushing. And just see, I'm essentially encouraging, if not forcing him to take the knight. If he doesn't take the knight, he's just dropping a piece on c6, or so it would seem. And after rook there, despite that probably being a good move, maybe one of the better moves, he's still in trouble for it. Activate our bishop to the square we know it wants to be on anyway. H5, I'm not exactly sure what's up with that move. I'm kind of tempted to just bring my bishop back, keep it simple, but let's continue with our typical moves in this opening. Remember, this is pinned to the rook. So yeah, as soon as I see it move, just immediately grab that. And now this is a threat because my bishop is hanging. So like I mentioned earlier, it is time to just bring that bishop back into civilization. And again, anything that takes on e5, it's f takes, and it's queen takes f7 threats. And time to bring this bishop back. There we go. And you know, when the dust settles, what are we up? Rook? Up a whole rook here. f6. Not only do we always take, but we always take when we win material. That's true. Gonna double the rooks. This pawn is hanging, but it'll be hanging next turn as well. We have a couple checks to do. Let's give a check. King h8 will walk into checkmate, and king h6 will walk into check and check, and not check and mate, but fulfilling the prophecy of the pawn checkmate, although a little bit late. Checkmate. There we go. So I thought we might get d6, which is very typical in this opening, but instead we just got a d5 move, and there's no stopping knight e5. Now the knight gets in there, and all the rest of the pieces go to squares that I think you could have predicted, right? Bishop out here, knight in, queen e2 or queen f3, rook would slide over. He ended up getting himself in even more trouble with tactics, but it's kind of easy to see how that might happen, unfortunately. e6, e5, and if he pushes, we'll still go f5. If he takes, which is common, the exchange French, let's call it, we still want to get our pawn to f5. We still want to play knight here, and you wouldn't believe how many people love to play bishop check. Let's solidify things. Okay, he goes here. Let's see if we can organize our Stonewall here. Yeah, this is a little bit annoying because we want to play, of course, knight here and knight here. We're going to have to work a little bit. Let's go g6. But it's all about a knight on e4. If we get a knight on e4, we're going to cause some havoc. Good move. Let's stick with our bishop d6 move. We're gonna castle, and we're gonna need to unpin ourselves, right? We can't do this until we unpin ourselves. Castle. All right, now the move that I like to unpin myself is probably this one. You know, queen e8 is obviously not an option. This move seems to get the job done while also hitting a pawn. So what we'd like to see is probably some move like this or this. And then boom. Knight comes in e4 and black's winning. Winning by force. Like I said, winning by force. Everybody, it's like a magnetic pull. They're forced to capture on e4. And there shows up the f-pawn. There shows up some material. We're attacking the queen twice, so the queen actually has to move here. I don't think there's any saving that bishop on d3. So bishop takes. We could take this, but there is a queen hanging in the position that I'll be more than happy to take off your hands. Speaking of taking something off your hands, give me that. And let's just finish the development and hopefully clean up this position. Knight into f4, a weak square that cannot be targeted. And the reason why it's so strong is it is a dark square, which means the bishop can't even attack it. So kind of a nice construction there. We're attacking two pawns. We're about to bring this knight in with great force. Let's hit the rook. Queen's coming in to say hello here. D2, D4. I'm looking at that pawn. Right, with the X-ray here, you can already see moves like knight takes g2, knight takes h3. All these kind of things will be pretty strong here. Check. And because the rook just moved away, this is a nice mate. Check. We see he's eager to escape. What is the correct procedure here? Let's start with this check. And slowly force him up the board. Check. Slowly but surely. Now we're able to fulfill the prophecy of a pawn mate. But don't rush. Enjoy yourself first. has to be another pawn mate. Look, I'm gonna start bringing the receipts. You're saying, hey, 50 subs for a pawn mate. Okay, great. I'm gonna start saving my receipts and I'll come back for tax season with a lot of credits. Wow, look at you. You made it, didn't you? To the end of another Stonewall episode. Well, congratulations. And if you're watching and enjoying, but you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that button right now. Also, click that bell to turn on post notifications so you never miss another video. See you in the next episode.